Transportation Planning Director here at PAG.
Good morning, Sam Credio, Director of Transportation and Mobility for the City of Tucson.
Catherine Skinner, Director of Transportation for Pima County.
Natalie Shep, Pima County Department of Environmental Quality.
Adam Ledford, PAG.
Hari Malpantong, PAG.
Good morning, Jamie Brown with PAG.
Right back there. I can't see the piano. There's just two of you. Okay, welcome. Okay, moving on to item.
And we have some online.
Sorry. On online, we got Jeremy. You want to introduce yourself, Jeremy?
We may need to promote everybody to panelists.
Can you hear us, Jeremy?
Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, we can. There you go.
Okay, yeah, you guys had to sign me up as a panelist. Now I'm here. Yeah, Jeremy with ADOT.
Great. Welcome, Jeremy. Okay, and then we got, who's next on this? Jennifer?
Jennifer Hobart, ADOT MPD.
Fausto?
Fausto Burrell, Town of Marana.
Hansu?
As you know, Pat.
Okay, again, welcome everybody. Let's move on to item number 2, in-kind reporting. Jeanette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable on the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. And before we get started, I did just want to thank everyone for switching dates and getting here. We had to readjust based on some other meetings. So thanks for being here. And I don't know, Natalie, if you want to use that microphone, it might be, you might have to make sure it's far enough from Catherine's, but we can all hear each other. Oh yeah, you're good. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, let's move on to item number 3, approval of the June 11th, 2025 meeting summary. Action item.
I move we approve the meeting summary.
Motion. And a second. Any question, comments? Hearing none, all those favors, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Approved. Moving on to item number 4, federal funding availability constraints. Jamie and Adam.
Yeah,
Both of them.
yeah, and Pari as well. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to help facilitate this discussion. Just really quick, though, I did notice on our screen we can see a couple of other folks joined us. I don't know if we should recognize them before we start.
Who's?
I think I see Josue
Josue, are you there?
Yes, good morning. Here, present.
and
All right, who else?
Mikhail Oglesby.
Yeah, Michael Oglesby. How are you doing?
Welcome. Anybody else online? Hearing none, thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So the purpose of today is to talk about federal funding that is available. Generally, we want to have this be a committee-driven process. We're looking for hopefully a recommendation today, but if we need more time, we can come back to the TPC. This is consistent with Regional Council direction. We did hear from the Regional Council Chair to involve committees in discussion about carbon reduction program funding, and that has been the staff recommendation as well. And so that's why in conversation with Mr. Ortega last week, the recommendation was to convene a special TPC meeting so that potentially next week we can bring a recommendation forward to the Regional Council. You've probably seen lots of emails from us, even as late as this morning, with some attachments. And so we want to acknowledge the fact that you're getting this information very late, later than normal. And so I apologize for that. We'll aim to get this to you sooner. Well, as we talk about it, you might understand, come to understand that some of this discussion is time sensitive. And that's why we did want to convene a special TPC meeting and also get as much information to you as we could. But because of the fact that you're getting it sort of late, we understand that maybe there's not enough time to digest and this would be an iterative process. So today we're going to be talking about regional transportation alternatives grants, carbon reduction program funding, TIFIA, and also just generally some information about how federal funding works, just as some background, because there are lots of different pieces to that. So we'll be providing some background information just to set the context for the discussion. We've also prepared some options that we'll walk through for your consideration. We've also left room for other options that the TPC may want to come up with. But we wanted to kind of get that conversation started. So we'll talk about the availability of the funds, the constraints, timeline, and some uncertainty around that. So I guess before we jump into Pari's discussion about obligation authority, want to pause there to see if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, anything that I missed, Adam or Pari. It's been a team effort as we prepare for this. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, it's a new day. We say that a lot, but this is a direct fulfillment to requests from the regional council and from the TPC, and so we are excited to enter into this kind of workshop format and discussion. And just again, thanks everybody for being here.
Mr. Chair, question.
Sorry.
Jamie, just so I'm clear as we go into this, are you looking for a recommendation from TPC today in the form of an action item at the end of this discussion? Is that ultimately where we're going? Just so I can, as we're going through this, I can think about what that might be.
Right. Yeah, that would be ideal because we want to keep the process moving, but at the same time, we don't want to add pressure to the committee to force that. So I think we do have some time if we need to reconvene in August and then request a recommendation. But ultimately, if the TPC they coalesce around recommendations, that would be great. But again, no pressure.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Adam?
Just expand on that a little bit more. We do recognize that we're really threading the needle here. I kind of had a slide built on this later, but it's worth mentioning now. We've seen the impacts of a new administration. We know we have a new surface transportation authorization bill that's coming up. And so we've been working hard to separate fact from myth and rumor as we kind of hear what is the future availability and uncertainty of especially carbon reduction program funding. And so we're bookended in between finding out everything we can. Okay, it's really here. It's really not going to go away this year, next year, we don't think. And so now is our last best opportunity, our first best opportunity, depending on how you look at it, to kind of present a full suite of options. If we waited any longer, some of those options would fall off the table. If we moved any earlier than this, we would just be saying, I don't know to every line item. So that's kind of where we are with the sensitivity. But bottom line is we're trying to time this to where no one feels like they're backed into a corner and they're left with no options but to vote yes because we're going to lose these funds or they're going to lapse or anything like that. We know that is an unpleasant pill to swallow, and we don't want to put anybody in into that position. So that's a little bit where we are. So if you hear a little hesitancy in our voices, it's because there's still a lot of uncertainty. And so recommendation today would be wonderful, but also a recommendation to ask the regional council for more time and have y'all take a month and discuss it in August is a very viable option. So,
yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll turn it over to Pari. She's going to provide some background information about terms we'll be using, apportionments, obligation authority, their key concepts to understanding how federal funding works. So Pari, please.
Thank you. So during this presentation, you will hear us say the word apportionment and obligation authority a lot. And this is a foundational concept that will help us better understand the issue and evaluate our options. So let's first start by saying federal highway funds come to the region as apportionments, and these apportionments are subject to obligation authority or OA. Apportionments are the amount set in program authorization bill. They are separated into different fund types. So for example, carbon reduction program or CRP, surface transportation block grant or STBG, and transportation alternative or TAs. These apportionments represent the upper annual limit of each fund type and population area suballocation. However, the amount we can actually spend in the region is subject to obligation authority or OA. And OA amount is set annually in the budget bill. It is generally set to 88 to 95% at the state level. So our OA for PAC region is 94.7%. So that means out of 100% of apportionments we receive into the PAC regions, we can program 94.7% of that amount. The difference between the apportionments and the OA create excess apportionment, which are funds that have been apportioned but cannot be obligated due to OA limit. So when I first started at PAC, this was one of the most confusing concept that I had to learn. And the way it was taught to me that I found to be the most intuitive was through a fishing analogy. So let's try that. So let's say we have a pond stocked with 100 fish every year, and we have different types of fish here. We have salmon, trout, cod. These 100 fish represent our apportionment. Then each year we have a catch limit of 95 fish, which represents our OA rate. We can fish any type of fish we want within our catch limit. However, we have to leave at the end of the year, 5 last fish must remain in the pond, and that represents our excess apportionment. So the idea with the OA limitation is that we can choose to catch any type of fish that we need for dinner that year. So we can catch all of the available salmon and trout and leave the last 5 trout, or the other way around. And this allows us to have the flexibility to choose the fund type that we need for our region. The concept of apportionment and OA is very important as we continue our discussion today. So I'll take a pause here for a second for any questions about this.
Any questions? Anybody online? Any questions? No question, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All
right.
I like the analogy.
Yes, that was the most intuitive way that was taught to me. I spend embarrassingly way too much time trying to understand this. All right, with that said, I'll hand it off to Jamie, who will share some more information about the Regional Transportation Alternative Grant, or RTAG.
Great, thank you, Barry. On my mic here. So yeah, we're going to talk about the RTAG program. We'll get back to this later when we talk about options. So this is just some background information again, and then we'll talk about CRP, TIFIA, and then again options. So we can always come back to this. But what's the situation with RTAG? So Regional Transportation Alternatives Grants, or RTAG, use federal formula funding matched by RTA Transaction Privilege Tax, TPT, at about 5.7% non-federal match to deliver bicycle and pedestrian improvements in the region. Federal funds for RTAG projects have included those from the Transportation Alternatives Program, as well as the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. Most federal funding is available by geographic area, as defined by the U.S. Census, in which PAG has the following 3 population areas. The PAG region, greater than 200,000 in population. And you can see that on the map. I know it's small, but that black outline represents that population area. 5,000 to 49,000 in population. You might see some boundaries that are kind of a brownish hue, burgundy. Those are those population areas. Like you can see in Sahuarita, for example, one in the Vail area, Corona de Tucson. And then other areas of the state with a population of less than 5,000. So if you were able to see the legend, you would see there's hatching across all other areas. So those are the 3 we have in our region. For federal requirements, a competitive selection process must be used, and the process must prioritize project location and impact in high-need areas as defined by the state, such as low-income, transit-dependent, rural, or other areas. So for the 2022 call for projects, we consulted with staff from ADOT and used the Title VI analysis low-income population map from the approved TIP for defining that. For the more recent call for projects, the 2023, we used the disadvantaged census tracts from the Justice 40 screening tool, again, in consultation with ADOT. It's important to note that we've looked for the 2022 federal guidance for the TA program, but it's no longer published on the USDOT website. We confirmed that with ADOT staff. However, it's our understanding right now, it's informal, that we should continue to follow that guidance until it's superseded. So we have been looking as a staff at a timeline for awarding the funding. And we've been in consultation with ADOT about what would be available from TA and from SDBG, and when it could be available if we use a loan and repayment opportunity, if they would even accept that. So we're looking at potentially fiscal years 27 and 28 for the programming. But backing away from that, we would want to probably get started pretty soon with finalizing the call for projects, releasing it, and going through that full process. Because again, it has to be a competitive selection process. So our recommendation for RTAG would be that the projects continue to meet the eligibility criteria for both the federal TA program as well as meeting the requirements for the RTA's Category 41, greenways, pathways, bikeways, and sidewalks. Projects would be required to be located along a major collector or grader or along an established bicycle boulevard. And scoring would be similar to continue with the emphasis on most miles and least cost per mile. This is the purpose of this is to help the RTA deliver on goals for miles of sidewalks and bikeways. We'd also like to propose a more flexible approach to making the funds available in the call for projects memo. So instead of having separate amounts for all three of those population areas I mentioned, we'd want to combine the funding that's available for the less than 5 and the 5 to 49 SDBG into one. And so depending on where the project is located and the funding amount that's awarded, PAG can ensure balance on the federal ledger using our overall work program SDBG allocation, which is flexible across population areas. Because the OWP is county-wide, we have the flexibility with the OWP to work with ADOT to assign that to any of those population areas. However, capital projects, infrastructure projects must adhere to those population area geographies. So there's some flexibility. We've kind of run some scenarios and we think it would work. So the maximum combined amount for both fiscal years would be established with some flexibility between fiscal years possible as long as maximums are not exceeded. And we would try to make it as clear as possible, including in the call for projects, a hypothetical scenario to illustrate it. Again, this is a concept and we're putting this out there as for your feedback and guidance and recommendation. But that's what we were thinking at this time. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Adam to talk about CRP and TIFIA.
Carbon reduction program, or as the kids would say, the spicy one. So thanks everybody for a little bit of levity. Just brief notes. I know we're all familiar with this fund type, but just the basics. It was introduced with the IIJA. This is a federal apportionment that effectively is passed through from ADOT to the COGS and MPOs. And it does have the 1+3 standard federal fund timeline where the year of apportionment plus 3 years before lapse is how it's structured. Carbon reduction program is subject to OA that Pari was talking about. And unlike TA funds or TAP program, it is not required to be administered competitively, but we do have that option to release a competitive call for projects. So as far as the eligibility goes, in one of the handouts, I believe we included the ADOT eligible list of projects. I know everyone is familiar with that. It's been passed around quite a bit. Just wanted to call attention to the fact that when it was built in the statute originally, the way it's worded is it gives a very, very brief description for reduction of carbon emissions. And then it says, here's a list of projects, but not limited to these. And so at one point, we understand that there was a little bit of a misunderstanding and people were thinking that that list was exhaustive rather than illustrative. And so we just wanted to call attention to that. Very similarly to what Jamie mentioned as far as other program guidance, that clarification memo has been pulled, but we're working under the informal assumption that it's still available. We even checked in with ADOT to say that this is still the way this works, right? Like the language is still the language, everything's good. And they said yes. So. Examples of the program, EV charging stations, either coupled or independently from TA. It could be used for multi-use paths, bike ped, LED lighting, even orthophoto feature extraction, which we're wrapping up right now from our fiscal 24 and 25 overall work program. And just like Jamie mentioned with other funds, it is sub-allocated by population area into the under 5K, 5 to 49 and over 200,000 population areas. So what do we have? So we have about $1 million from the overall work program. So we obligated the full amount of last year's apportionment. We have those 3 projects. They're coming to the conclusion, and there's about $1 million left over, which is coming back to the region available for programming. The OA was already factored into this as it was authorized in a prior year. So it satisfied the OA requirements of fiscal 25. So this is actually a good thing. It's coming in with full availability. The population areas are to be determined. And the reason why, as Jamie mentioned, the overall work program has great flexibility and is not kind of limited to the population bands because it's regional efforts. Whereas when we break that back out for programming, and it's not a part of the OWP, we do need to understand what population bands are. So we're working with ADOT to kind of pull it out of that OWP obligation lockbox, for lack of a better word, that it's in now, and get it back on the ledger. And that's when we're going to know what population areas it's available in. Also, the timeline of that fund availability, what is the mechanism to get that out of the old work program? We're waiting to finish the last of the reimbursement requests for the projects that are being fulfilled. And then how do we get it back on that ledger? There's just a couple of little question marks hanging there, but it's going to show up. So we feel good about that. Also, there's 2.3 estimated $1 million for fiscal 26. This is the new fiscal year apportionment. Classically, these federal programs increase by 2% every year. So that's what we're using as our working number. That's been very reliable in the past, but we won't know for certain until those apportionments are officially released just a little bit later this year. But we're talking weeks, not months on that. These new apportionments will be fully subject to OA and the population area sub-allocations. Yes.
I apologize.
Talk
I
about it.
haven't spent time with the 26 OWP, but that's been approved, right?
Yes.
And how is it actually how is CRP in state, like what is it saying in your OWP that it's supposed to be used for what just passed?
Oh, that's a great question. We did not program a single dollar of CRP into the OWP.
Okay.
Based on a number of different factors. Part of it's fair to acknowledge that that would not have been the desire, I think, of any of the committees, potentially. But also, when we had an ADOT planning meeting for COG MPOs on the finance side of things, at that time, it was suggested that programming CRP funds, because of the uncertain availability and a lot of the language changes we're seeing where they were pulling environmental justice, they're pulling greenhouse gas emission. Y'all are very familiar with this. Because of that, it was recommended not to program those into federally required documents for fear that there might be a formal rescission or clawback. And so then that would just kind of wreck the program. So rather than doing that, we chose to leave those unexpended and available for this conversation that we're having today.
Thank you.
You bet. And Jamie or Pari, please feel free to jump in anytime.
Well said, Adam, if I may. Jennifer's online and she knew we were going to be discussing this today, Jennifer Hobart from ADOT MPD, and she's very familiar with our conversations with ADOT finance staff. She's involved in those and all the communication. So I do want to invite Jennifer to chime in too at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I think you guys are doing a good explanation right now. So I'll chime in when I feel like it's needed.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, so as we've been preparing, we've had several conversations with ADOT. They've been wonderful partners as always. We're very grateful for their input and clarifying conversations that we've had. Here's the good news as we see it. CRP funding is apportionment funding. It's passed through to COGS MPOs. And apportion funding is relatively entrenched in the whole program, and it's much harder to pull out than competitive funding or discretionary funding if OAs came through and things like that. It's baked in pretty well. So in the near term, the risk of a formal rescission or clawbacks are very unlikely. And again, though, we are going to be moving into an area where if we observe the language changes at the federal level as any kind of a trend, I think it's safe to say that it's unlikely that CRP will appear in the new surface transportation authorization. So obviously that means apportionments in fiscal 27 and 28. We're not counting on those at all, and we're just prepared to see what happens. Additionally, however, once that new surface transportation authorization bill comes, it creates a very, very large window of uncertainty. ADOT was not in a position to give formal guidance because quite simply, we do not know what's going to happen. But the terminology that was kicked around in the room, and that I was given permission to quote this, is that let's treat fiscal 27 with an asterisk and let's treat fiscal 28 with a huge asterisk. So basically the idea is, okay, this is no longer a currently active administered fund type. Hey, let's look at the federal level at the balances, what's been obligated, what's been expended, what hasn't lapsed yet that's sitting in accounts. Oh, look, here's some CRP. We don't know that that's the scenario that's going to happen. I'm just being perfectly frank. So everything that we're framing today is in terms of uncertainty, but we believe that it's not unfair to associate an escalating level of risk for fear of availability going away for these fund types. And I say that because the way that we're kind of providing the framework today is that we're really here to offer advice and feedback as it's requested by this committee, but we're really offering minimal recommendations. Really what we've done, the extent of our recommendation is that we've framed these with respect to the uncertainty as the timeline occurs. There are some near-term options and there are more long-term options involving loan scenarios that would get this funding available even out into 27 and 28. But we're just asking that you remember those asterisks. Additionally, as delicately as I can put it, these are not filtered by their pleasantness or palatability. There are some traditionally considered unpleasant options on here or less desirable, but we feel like our mission as we see it is to provide a comprehensive set of options. Some of them are very low risk, but again, we leave that to the committee to discuss at your pleasure. Also, we want to consider that there's an aspect of RTA1 fulfillment as we listen to the technical management committee meetings, as we listen to the RTA board meetings. We understand that the region has a desire and an obligation to fulfill RTA1. There are a couple of different buckets that we could do that in. Bike ped mileage is one category that we're trying to fulfill. But also, and I'm not burying the lead on this, we'll talk about it in just a second, but there's a chance that in a very interesting way, the discussion today could move towards fulfilling RTA roadway projects. And again, we're getting there, not trying to bury the lead, so I'll keep moving. Timing, we basically already addressed this earlier on. Like I said, our best effort is to not paint anybody into a corner and feel like they have to make a decision before they feel like it's the right decision. So that brings us over to TIFIA, Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. Very recently, we received kind of a drop-in extra apportionment effectively that came through as a TIFIA redistribution from that program. It was brought into our region as STBG greater than 200K, and it's about $2 million. It came in outside of the conventional apportionment cycle. I say awaiting confirmation on carry forward is fine. This is so new that we just did get the confirmation on the carry forward. So this will be available now in fiscal 26. It did not convey any additional obligation authority though. So if we're going back to the fish in the pond, there's more fish in there, but they did not raise the catch limit. So if you think about, we're operating on the margins, right? Like, so we have these programs that aren't a part of OWP. So we're working with this subset. This came in, so it's kind of like pick your favorite two, or pick 1.5 out of the 3 that are available that are left. Again, it was released to the region as STBG greater than 200K. We already had other population bands, so it really made sense to pop it in there. That wasn't our decision. That's just how ADOT let us know. But we're kind of grateful because it didn't convey any additional OA, so really it's just coming in as a choice or as an option. Part of the timing of why we're doing this now is we really wanted you to have this information. Mike wanted you to have this information. And we know that because this is SDVG greater than 200K, but it's not the same old SDVG greater than 200K. The question is this automatically swept? Is this, grandfathered into the agreements that were made many years ago to sweep regional funds for the fulfillment of roadway projects? And we have not yet had that conversation with the regional council. So we don't know. So that's why, and we appreciate everybody's patience as we went through all three of these. Now, hopefully you can see they're quite interwoven, because making a recommendation or trying to get to a decision today may have a $2 million reduction if these funds, if the regional council decides that these should be funds that are swept and are not available for these other programs, because that would bump out either some $2 million of CRP, or it would bump out $2 million of TA or RTEC funding. So that was a lot. Happy to pause here and take any questions, but I know everybody's excited to get to the options as well. So we can just keep rolling too, if anybody wants.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody, committee, questions? Online?
Keep rolling.
Keep rolling, Adam. I don't see no questions. Thanks.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So Pari is going to walk through a handout that has options, but we also have other handouts that will help guide the discussion. So I don't want to, I'm not trying to inundate you with handouts, but we think, well, there are different pieces to this. So we've got the options that we'll walk through, and we've got an area for notes that we can take notes, you can take notes on the handout. There's also a nice flow chart that kind of illustrates the options and how those work together. And then finally, there's a table that shows the obligation authority limits and apportionments, and we can kind of walk through that with Excel, and she's even got it set so that we can even do some hypothetical scenarios with you in terms of, okay, what if we do this and this in this fiscal year with this funding source? What does it look like? So that, I guess I would turn it over to you, Pari, to walk us through the options first. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll take a look at the option, which I think is document number 1. All right, so I'll briefly walk through the options with you to see what is available for us. So option 1, the first option is to make approximately $2 million available to the region as STBG in the greater than 200,000 population area, and this will be made available for RTA roadway project. And this is made possible through the additional apportionment from TIFIA that Adam walked us through earlier. It is important to consider that the RTA roadway projects that will be obligated this fund have to already be federalized or willing to be federalized, and that they are able to be obligated in fiscal year 2026. This is an intermediate step, and it will require us to address the remaining fund amount using other strategies that we'll explore here in just a little bit. With this option, there's very, very minimal to none uncertainty around the availability of the funds that we decide to obligate to RTA roadway projects, again, because we will be able to obligate that in FY 2026, which is the year that the fund is apportioned to us. However, the remaining amounts that are going to be addressed with other options will carry the same uncertainty as other options. The second option is to release a CRP funds for a competitive call for projects. The uncertainty of this option depends again on how or when we can obligate the funds. The uncertainty is very low if we can obligate in FY 26, and it increases thereafter. So we should prioritize activities that can be obligated sooner. Any delay in obligation beyond FY 27 will significantly increases the uncertainty around funds availability due to the conclusion of the current Surface Transportation Authorization Bill. The one thing to note about this option is that if we obligate in 2027, funds will be made available in FY 2027 via a loan process with ADOT, which is not guaranteed. It is at ADOT's discretion, and it is subject to a $10 million statewide limit. The next option, option 3, is going to be another intermediate option that will require us to later program the funds to projects. This option we will obligate CRP apportionment to the FY 26 and 27 OWP, which again will locks in that funds as OA in our region as CRP OA. And this allow us more time to develop a process or evaluate our options on how we want to program the funds. The uncertainty level is low again because this option, even in FY 2027, because we are locking in the OA onto our OWP. The fourth option is another intermediate option again that will require us to later program funds into the projects. The option will involve programming the CRP funds to eligible activities currently funded with lower population STBG in our FY 26 and 27 OWP. So simply put, we will exchange CRP for lower population STBG OA through our OWP. We will need to address the programming of these lower population STBG funds, and this option carries a similar low uncertainty to option 3. However, the difference here is that we will lock in STBG OA as opposed to CRP OA in the previous option. Option 5 requires to identify any existing bike or pedestrian projects in the PAC TIB that might need additional funding. The level of uncertainty will again depends on the fiscal year that we can obligate to. The further away the obligation timing, the higher the uncertainty. And the last option, option 6, is to release CRP funds along with the RTAC call for project for obligation in FY 27 and 28. Again, this option will carry a high uncertainty because the funds will be obligated in 27 and 28. And the last option you'll see on the table would be other option that we might want to venture into. I know there are a lot of options on the table here, so a flow chart attached might help us see a little bit clearer how these options work together. And this is document number 2, I believe. So on the left, we see our CRP. We have $1 million in OA and 2.3 approximately in apportionment. So in total, 3.3 million in apportionment and OA. And again, this is a draft number. We haven't received a final number from ADOT yet, so it's subject to change. So we want to end up in the blue box where we in the obligation options, and there are 2 paths for us to do this. We can either walk straight into the blue box, the obligation option, which will include standalone CRP, call for project, existing bike peds, or bundle with RTAC or other option we might come up with. Or we can go the other path, which is going through the intermediate option in the purple box above. So in this option, we'll either go through TIFIA, which will spit out reduces OA overall that will go into the blue box. We can go with obligating CRP into 26 and 27 OWP, which will in turn locks in OA as CRP as it goes into the blue box. Or we can obligate the full amount in exchange for lower population band STBG, which will feed by replacing CRP OA with STBG lower population band that will feed into the blue box. With that, I will pause for discussion.
Thank you, Byron. Okay, anybody questions? There's a lot of information to process there, guys.
Piece of cake, right?
Anybody? Catherine? Anybody online?
This one is.
To be honest, I haven't seen it. Was that sent over to us? Yeah, I was on my way over here, so I didn't.
You want us to walk through an example, Mr. Chair, members of the committee?
I'll say, I mean, I super appreciate you guys laying it out like this. It's just a lot to try to navigate. I think the flow chart helps. and maybe it's because I looked ahead to this one, I'm just trying to figure out the dollars that exist depending on which path. And I understand like they're not set in stone yet. These are all estimates. We're basing it on a lot of assumptions. But there's some much bigger numbers on this document 3 than in that originating CRP box. So I think I'm just kind of, that's where I'm saying maybe once we get to this, it'll start to gel. But thank you for putting this together. I mean, the fish analogy was great.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
the effort.
So, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Adam and Pari. Yeah, good question about the flow chart versus the table. So the flow chart is really focused on CRP and addressing the 3.3. So now the table that we can put up is actually more comprehensive and includes other apportionments in OA that we would be solving for. So I talked about RTAG. So decisions that the committee makes on CRP could affect the amount of funding for RTAG.
So right now, the total amount for the CRP is $3.3 million. We see it on the screen right now.
As of current, yes.
The RTAG,
Let's pull up document 3 if we could.
Yeah.
what, anybody questions on so far?
Well-
Anybody? Oh, Sam.
Mr. Chair, I just want to understand the assignment. The assignment is to figure out what to do with the 3.3 million. That's the big question we're trying to solve today.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, really what we're looking to do is to make sure that you're aware that these 3 are kind of intermingled and that we're looking for what your sense of prioritization, like we're asking you to pick, your favorite 2 children out of 3.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here. So it's a tough assignment. Each way that you choose, again, because OA is fairly limited, there's only so many building blocks that can fit back into the box, and some are going to be left out. And so that's really the nature of the assignment is, do you want to, I'm just going to offer some stuff. These are not recommendations. Do you want to forsake all CRP in favor of TIFIA and lower population band STBG and do a traditional RTAG route and just not have anything? Do you want to prioritize your recommendation to create all availability for CRP and potentially take some out of RTAG? Do we think that it's highly likely that the STBG greater than 200 will be swept? And so we accept that $2 million is coming off of the table. And is that coming out fully of CRP or is that coming fully out of RTAG? This is really the blend of choices as you're just figuring out what do you need to discard to get your best hand that works best for the region.
And then before you go to this table, Jamie, you said maybe there was an example that you all put together, or you asked if it would help if we saw an example?
Well, earlier I was talking, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I was talking about an example for RTAG and the call for projects. And I also, in terms of this context, I think we have an Excel here that if we can put it on screen, we can talk about examples like, okay, like Adam was saying, let's assume the sweep of the 2 million of STBG to RTA roadway element. What does that leave us with in terms of CRP? And we can actually play with those numbers. That's also what I was thinking. And we haven't done, I don't think we've done any real detailed scenarios.
Okay. And so I understand the word sweep. You're not talking about an ADOT sweep. You're talking about it going all to RTA roadway projects. That's the sweep.
Right. Yeah, the sweeping of regional funds for the purposes of fulfilling RTA 1 roadway elements.
Got it. Okay.
Basically, what we have is options right now an option on the $2 million. Where do you want to, can you put it all CRP, RTAG or STBG? And then in that case, they can be swept into the RTA projects. Is that what we're looking at, basically? We're not looking at more money. We're just saying if we have an option right now with that $2 million, because the OA didn't change, but the apportionment did. They mixed it around the $2 million. So they brought more fish. Okay, you got an option here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
You can do all salmon or you can do. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what the committee's looking at. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's if there's no more questions, move on to the next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, Issa, if we're able to enable Pari to share her screen, she's got an Excel version of the table that would allow her to show different options for us to just look at for the committee to look at.
I just share my screen.
Oh, there we go. So we can see it down here. Sweet.
Can't see
Oh, you
down
can
there.
see it? Oh, no, there we go.
You know, if it's too small.
Yeah, no.
I'm trying to fit all three of these tables in the view for us, so.
We might just have to pan back and forth between the two to get
Yeah,
it large enough
yeah.
to read.
Yeah.
Is that large?
There we go.
Okay. So these are the two tables that we have in the handout. The blue table is the obligation authority. So this is the upper limit of what we can spend. This is our catch limit. The green table is our fish in the ponds. We have CRP, lower population and CBG, and TA. So again, these numbers are much larger than what you see in the flow chart because this encompasses a more comprehensive federal ledger, and this includes what was going to be available for our tag as well. So what we can do is in the blue table, the first line, no sweep, means that RTA1 will not sweep the TIFIA amount. So our OA for 2026 will be about $5 million. But if RTA decides to sweep the TIFIA part, all of it, assuming we'll have left with 2.8 million, and you will see that it's this OA amount, 5 million minus this 2 million in TIFIA. So the exercise here is we can choose any combination of things in the green table that will make up the blue table as our upper limit. And as we venture through some examples, I can put our idea into this program table in the middle. And what that would do is it will show us what's left for us to spend both in terms of OA and apportionment in the right table.
Let's go ahead and do like a throw $1 million from one of the fund sources so they can see how.
Yeah, let's do an example. So for example, if we say we want to release CRP greater than 200,000 as a call for project in 2026, we want to do $1 million. Okay, so we see that, we'll see that in the sweep, in the no sweep scenario, we'll have $4 million left of OA in 26. In the sweep scenario, we'll have $1.8 million left in OA. And apportionment for CRP greater than 200,000 will be 3.7 million. And as we get more options, we can add more. For example, if we say we want to do TA greater than 200,000 as RTAC, and we want to do 500,000 of that. Oh, that's 5 million. Okay, we'll see that our OA also goes down and our TA apportionment goes down.
And if I just may add, I think more realistically on the RTAG, we were kind of hoping that we wouldn't release funds in 2026. I know this is just completely hypothetical, but I think it's important that we give the agencies lots of lead time for development of projects. So I guess in this case, I mean, it's just again hypothetical, but for RTAG, I think we were looking at 27 and 28 for when the funds would be available. But
Remind me again on the sweep and no sweep, clarification on that. So who's sweeping funds and who's not? Is that, okay.
Yeah, let me add RTA here.
It is a little bit confusing as well, just because of what's going on with RTA. I mean, there's so many unknowns with that as well, right? So are we assuming that things are just going to move forward and it be passed? And what are we assuming with RTA right now?
that is a very important question, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Go ahead. Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, just because I've been participating in the TMC, I can maybe answer that. There's really two tracks going on. There's RTA 1 and RTA Next. And if I understand correctly, the conversation here is, since this is a new regional funding source, is it subject to the same requirement to be swept or allocated to complete RTA? We know there's a goose or a big hole there that we have to fill. And so I think that's what this whole sweep or no sweep, I think the plan right now is still to move forward to try to complete the RTA 1 program. every indication I get.
Yes.
I just wanted to kind of follow up on that. I mean, I guess my question would be, are there projects in RTA one roadway projects that could use this money as federal money in fiscal 26? Because that's kind of,
For what it's dedicated. Bike ped really is what.
well, I think,
So, I mean, that would be.
No, maybe it's-
That's my concern is that I want to see it be used for what it's supposed to be used for. So.
I mean, I think we're dealing with we've got a lot of bike ped projects. I mean, as the county, we don't have enough money on projects that have our tag funding that are in fiscal year 26, that if we don't get additional funding, I don't think we'll be moving forward with the project. So that's going to be a loss for RTA one. It's not an RTA one roadway loss, but it's a loss of mileage to that category. So I think, I mean, it's a hard balance between the two. And I just thought a simple way to start the discussion is, are there even eligible costs for federal money in roadway
Good question.
for RTA one?
And I believe Janet.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that conversation there too. I think whether they sweep it or not, that we're in a position right now where you guys could make that part of your recommendation, where you could say, hey, we have these projects and our recommendation would be to do that. Now, whether they sweep or don't sweep, we know that that's up to the RTA board, but a case could be made either way. And that's why your recommendation is important.
Mr. Chair, I just want to echo Catherine's comments. I know that we have at least one project that is already RTAG funded that's eligible for CRP that is going to have a shortfall for construction dollars. Through our design process, we're trying to address that shortfall, but I think that that would be an example of a project that we could probably pretty quickly program CRP funds on and meet the obligation deadline. I'm guessing Catherine may have one as well. As much as I would like to see a call for projects for new projects, because we certainly have some CRP eligible projects that we would love to fund, I think the most reasonable solution here is to find already federalized projects that are short, that we could very quickly program those funds and meet the obligation. And the one in particular I'm talking about, we're going to be ready for construction in June of 2026. We'll be completed with design. And so we can definitely meet the deadline. So that would be, I don't know if that's in the form, it's not in the form of a motion, but that is a recommendation that I would make. I don't know which category that falls in here, but if we were going to do a call for projects, we could probably make it so narrowly scoped that it has to be a project that's already federalized, maybe already has RTAG funds and can very quickly accept the CRP.
I agree. I mean, let's finish up what we have on the table right now.
That I agree as well. I think, and just back to the roadway part of it, I just don't even know if that's an option. If there's not a good receiving project, then that option comes off the table. Even if it would be our desire to do that, and I'm not saying it is or isn't. If there's not a project to take the money, then why would we keep that on the table?
You need more information on that part, yeah.
If I may, Mr. Chair, in terms of the question, if there are any RTA roadway element projects that are federalized that could use the money, I just wanted to ask Mr. Credio, 22nd Street Bridge, we've been directing, 100% in some years of the region's SDBG greater than 200,000 has been programmed on that project. Could that project use more money if that is, in fact, the policy still holds for?
Sure. Thank you, Jamie. Mr. Chair, that was one project that came to mind immediately. I will tell you my only concern with 22nd Street is we have been waiting on the federal government to give us approval, the grant approval for the RAISE grant for months now. And as far as I know, it's sitting on someone's desk in Washington, D.C. So I don't have clarity on how that and when that project's going to move forward. And that uncertainty gives me a little bit concerned about saying, yeah, let's throw it all at 22nd. If that moves here soon, then absolutely. I think that project is going to probably need and can accept more federal funds. The other one that we could consider, but I don't know right offhand what the timeline is the Valencia I-19 to Alvernon project. That's also federal. And I know that our initial pass at proposed improvements exceeded the RTA amount, federal amount. So that's another one. I don't know if it's eligible and if it's the right mixture of what, But that one is moving forward and, in my opinion, is probably a less heavier lift than 22nd Street. But those are the two RTA roadway element projects that come to mind for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody online have any questions? Well, at this point in time, we can either make a motion or we could also make a motion to go back to our office and look at this now that we're armed with this information and follow up if you need more time to.
I mean, I don't even know what the motion would be, to be quite frank with you. I don't know what it is we're being asked to propose. I think that my recommendation to the regional council was we have some ideas on how we can solve this. I think there are some low-hanging fruit. And if you need that in the form of a motion, maybe we can make it. I just don't know what that motion would be.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one thing that might help is, rather than getting all the way to the finish line, it's like just picking the path. And it seems so far, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it seems like we're kind of starting to gravitate towards the faster fulfillment, minimize unsecurity and maybe associated risks. So it could be that could be an intermediate agreement point that you're really winnowing your options down to fast acting, shovel ready, however you phrased it earlier, already federalized. That could be a way to really trim off most of the other remaining options, and then you're really working in a tight set.
I think I agree, and I'm going to add, it would be my preference to try to keep this money that is transportation alternatives or carbon reduction on those smaller scale projects that there's been less opportunity for regional funding over the past 10 years. And right now we're struggling knowing whether we can deliver those projects. I don't know if there's any advantage or if Sam even knows off the top of his head how much money those need. Because I don't know if typing some of that into the middle section and kind of seeing what's the leftover that we're working with would be helpful or not.
I think so.
So,
Mr. Chair, so I do have a ballpark on how much we need specifically for the RTAG for, I think it's the Copper Flower Bike Boulevard. I have an amount and we can plug it in if you want. I also was just going to say too that we probably know which projects those are. And so rather than do a call for projects, it's like, here's all the projects that are eligible for this jurisdictions. What is your need? And then it's really just, in my opinion, a simple exercise of doing the math. But we can, do you know your amounts?
Ballpark. Again, I mean, I
Can do the
agree.
same.
I think it would be helpful if we narrowed it in and then had a week or however much time, a few days to gather with our teams that are closer to these numbers so that we can refine them and have a more accurate recommendation.
so we're looking at RTAG funding, basically, moving the money to the RTAG and looking at shovel-ready projects.
I think CRP
Oh,
qualifies for a lot of our tag type things. They can be used for the same purposes. So
When I mean shovel-ready, I mean not shovel, I mean using federal dollars. Or
yes, using federal and shovel ready projects.
federalized.
Yeah.
So do we want to do that exercise? I mean, I have an upper limit number that I can share. And if Catherine has an idea, we might be able to just see what that math looks like as an example.
Adam, you have a question? Or
No, I'll hold
comment?
off for now. No, moving into this exercise, I think supplants my question.
okay,
Mr. Chair, and by the way, I want to be respectful for the other jurisdictional members. I'm not suggesting that this is the only path forward, but it's been real hard for me to visually see what we're trying to do here without having some sort of concrete
great.
exercise. So I just want to say that I'm not preempting the other jurisdictions.
I don't see any hands, so yeah, let's do that.
So it will be, I guess, CRP greater than 200,000.
Or the City of Tucson's project. Yeah. And do you know which year, fiscal year?
Let me take a look.
I guess it could be, do they have a choice?
So if we want to minimize the uncertainty and obligate us as soon as we can, 2026 would be the top choice. Is that a possibility?
So we will be ready for Copper Flower Saguaro. We will be ready in June of 2026.
That would be 20.
That's still, yep. And the need for that project right now, the upper limit is 2.2 million.
So what does this show on the right then when you plug that in?
Yeah, so it will show that if we fund the Copper Flower project using CRP greater than 200,000 in the amount of 2.2 million in FY 2026, in the no sweep scenario, we'll be left with OA of 2.8 million in 26. In the RTA one sweep for roadway project scenario, we'll be left with about $620,000 in OA. And the apportionment for CRP greater than 200,000 will reduce to 2.5 million.
So yeah, I have mine, and mine, it's the Palo Verde sidewalk, so it would also be in the over 200,000 range. And our upper limit is 1.4 million. We're on schedule to go for obligation in March, April of this year, so fiscal year 26.
Okay, so in the no sweep scenario, we'll still have $1.4 million left in OA in FY 2026. But if we venture into the sweep scenario, we'll be in the negative. So meaning that we can't fund the entire, both project in its entirety.
If we did the TIFIA or whatever
Yeah,
over to
yeah,
RTA.
yeah.
So this is a possible scenario. It just would, okay.
And we still have TA apportionments as well. I mean, we know that TA requires a competitive selection process, but we are open to feedback on that process. But again, as
Well,
long as it doesn't violate the pure,
Yeah, and I wonder what the parameters are of this, because both these projects were selected through the competitive process. The Palo Verde, I know we had submitted for more funding and it was limited at the time, so
Yep.
I think they did go through the process. If they're already RTAG in the tip, it did go through a process.
Mr. Chair, Jamie, the only thing I would add is I know that there are some categorical elements of the RTA plan that are still a little bit short. And going through a competitive process for RTAG might give the region an opportunity to fulfill some of those. I would not have an issue continuing with the current RTAG process as it's already. I think there's probably some need out there, like Catherine said, that's not being fulfilled by RTA 1 roadway element projects, and this is just a way to get some of those done. So I wouldn't have an issue with keeping RTAG as it's currently planned.
okay, thank you.
Anybody online, any questions, proposals? And
I just wanted to mention, certainly we still do need to understand, it sounds like, potentially there's a recommendation that could be made for next week to say, please don't sweep TIFIA if there's any opportunity not to sweep TIFIA, because we can still satisfy RTA 1 projects. At the same time, if I'm getting the sense that we are trying to do earlier obligation, earlier expenditure, that takes a little bit of the pressure off of needing to make a decision right now. The reason why we're communicating the sense of urgency is if the will of the committee was to really try to push towards bundling it with a larger RTAG call for project in 27, 28, even accepting the risk and everything, we would have to start on a development timeline really, really fast. That's the most complex and the most risky option, uncertain option, sorry. So if those are potentially falling off the table, again, not trying to put words in the committee's mouth, but that opens up a little bit more time for exploration on project identification for the other folks on the call, things like that. Revisiting this in August suddenly becomes a lot easier to do because we're not risking, not getting started on developing this robust call for projects.
Mr. Chair.
Jen.
One thing I just want to mention, I think it's important for the conversation with PAG Regional Council. Both of these projects that Catherine and I just mentioned have RTA as a local match, are counting towards the delivery of categorical elements in the plan. So in a way, it's still contributing to the delivery of RTA 1. Given the uncertainty with 22nd Street Bridge, and I don't know how much value there is to adding more money to an already federalized RTA project that we're going to pretty much deliver. we're going to scope to budget, it doesn't seem like it really fills the RTA one hole that much. So I just wanted to note that it's not, we're not being ignorant to the fact that adding more money to these projects doesn't help RTA one. I think it still contributes to that. That's my comment.
Good, don't know that. Any questions? See any?
I'll just add, I named the one project. I know we have another project that came through the RTAG competition process. I just wasn't able to dig up whether there's a funding shortfall. So I imagine all of the members here might be in the same situation where they need to dive in a little bit deeper. So I don't want to make this a limiting step, but I agree with what Adam said. I think we're narrowing in on looking at projects that were already funded generally through a competitive process. They are working towards RTA goals and they are on a path already to be obligated in 26 for the most part.
That makes sense. Well, this is definitely a potential recommendation. I can't think of anybody else. Well, nobody else is on mine, unless if somebody else has something that needs time to go back to the office and.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I'll just ask, do you all need an action from us, or have you gotten sufficient feedback to take to the regional council next week?
Well, I guess if it were me, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I would like, if the committee is coalescing around a recommendation, even if it's not specific to a project, but just this is how the TPC thinks the regional council recommends how we think we should consider these funds. I think it would be helpful to have some text that we can work with, that we could share. At the same time, if you're not ready today, we have the possibility of coming back to the regional council in August. There are some special RTA board meetings that maybe an our regional council meeting can be tacked onto. But if there's comfort with some things that have been discussed, these concepts, and you think that's a recommendation, I think perhaps we can solidify that if there's majority support of the TPC. So I'm taking notes, and I've heard, for example, that although this idea of sweeping the greater than 200,000 SDBG/TIFIA is worthy consideration, there's some uncertainty with the projects that could use those funds, right? In terms of like 22nd Street. So is that really the best option given that uncertainty? If there's some flexibility with that from the regional council, then it sounds like there's a desire to send out a limited call for projects with the CRP funding to apply to those federalized bike ped projects that could obligate in fiscal year 26. So I heard that. And then I also heard for RTAG that just generally that it would be valuable to consider moving forward with what remains as a call for projects for any bike ped projects that could be funded and help deliver the goals for sidewalks and bike paths in the region, meet the RTA goals. Those are some things I heard. Thoughts?
Mr. Chair, I think that's accurate. That's an accurate summary of the discussion. And I would be willing to put that in the form of a motion, that's our recommendation. So I move that we make that recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second, and then can I follow up with a question or a clarification? I'm trying to understand timeline wise, like, would it be an abbreviated call for projects? Because to get all of the steps required to get the TIP amended, and I don't know if this is a formal amendment or an administrative amendment, and then have those in place so that it can be with our package for obligation in the early spring. I know that sounds like a long time, but there's not that many meetings. So I guess that's the only clarification. How quick can we do the turnaround on a call for projects?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, you might recall this for Sunset Road several years ago. We did a turnaround of about a week. It was an email call for projects, and it was the only project that was eligible because it was federalized, et cetera. So I think it could be turned around very quickly. I've seen it done before. So I agree with you. But if that's that should be the will of the TPC, not me. But I've seen us turn it around quickly. Now, RTAG is more involved. Again, it's competitive. It's more detailed. So that would take months for that process to unfold. But the CRP doesn't require competitive, and we can do a limited call for projects quickly if desired.
Okay,
And
great.
Mr. Chair, I would support that. And I would recommend if we need to meet sooner than the normal TPC schedule, that maybe we do like a special virtual only meeting that we can meet and go through the projects and vote as a committee on which ones would be eligible and how much.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sam. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I hate to repeat, what was that motion? Jamie?
Whatever Jamie said.
Whatever Jamie said.
Luckily, it's recorded, so we can go back to the recording if that
Yes.
suffices.
I think it really coalesced around three recommendations: is uncertainty about sweeping the TIFIA money for the two federal projects that are most likely eligible, a limited call for projects for CRP, and continue with the normal RTAG competitive process.
Great. That's our motion, and we have a second. Any questions?
Sorry, I want to add one thing. I think it would be important in the language of that recommendation to also add a strong desire to utilize funds to fulfill RTA 1, but through the categorical bike ped element rather than RTA roadway sweeps for that TIFIA greater than 200K.
I will include that as an amendment to the
Inclusion
motion.
motion.
And I second that.
Second. All right, any further questions, comments? Seeing none, okay, there's an action item. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. Thank you. Motion carries. Improved. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys, let's see. Let's go back to,
That's the last item.
I lost my paperwork. Next one, that's my paperwork.
This has been very, very helpful. We appreciate everybody's patience as we walk through all this information and for all of the input. It's been
And-
extremely helpful.
Yes,
Thank you to
so
staff
much.
as
Wait a
well.
minute.
No, you're good.
We good, Sam?
I move we adjourn.
The motion, stand adjourned. Thank you.